by talking about the season. And, the resurrection of Jesus Christ remains the cornerstone of the Christian faith, symbolizing victory over death and the promise of eternal life. It is against that backdrop that my guest and I will be discussing Easter and its enduring relevance in addressing human longing for purpose and transcendence. Again, we would also talk about how it's germane, how Easter, is germane as a basis for ethical Christian living. My first guest on this episode is here and is typically ready for this discourse. He is Reverend Father Joseph Obada, the chaplain, Regina Patri's Girls College here in Garki, Abuja. Father, good to have you back in the studios.
It's always a pleasure.
The last time we had a robust conversation. I think it was on the intercessions of faith. And
Yes.
it was quite just as critical, robust as it was critical. Best of the season to you, Father. Happy
Same
Easter.
to you. Thank you. Thank you. Same to you.
Wonderful. So, Father, over the ages, the story of Easter has clearly registered, and invited both conviction and curiosity. Conviction for the faithful, of course, Christians. For them, Easter is do I use the word deviant now? But just deviant and joyous declaration that the worst darkness cannot extinguish the light of Jesus Christ. And, I talked about curiosity earlier, and I meant for those who maybe have reduced the resurrection to a myth, a metaphor, or some abstract spiritual idea. But Father, what does this season, and how does this season reinforce the narrative that the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ is both a historic reality and the foundation for cosmic redemption?
Well, thanks very much, and happy Easter again. You see, I love the way you began it. This quest for purpose and transcendence. That, I think, highlights the real answer to the question you asked. So the Easter as it is, Pascha, if you go to the more original language, this is the way I like to put it.
Okay.
It will have been a scam. Christianity will have been a scam without the resurrection. It will have just been another man who came, said many things, did many things, as many people had done before him, and then in fact, I like the title of a book I once read that titled it Bad, Mad, or God.
Bad,
Mad, or God. And
Okay.
what the author was trying to present was the fact that it's either Jesus was just bad in the sense of he just came and lied to everybody, or he was mad in the sense of you'd actually claim to be God, or neither of the two, and he is actually God. So bad, mad, or God. And the reason I'm towing this line is because I like the fact that you highlighted the history to it. So, you could still go to the Holy Land and trace in concrete terms everything that was said about Jesus prior to his birth, while he was alive, and post-resurrection. There are traces to that. So we are not working with a myth. We are not working with a legend. We are working with a reality. And that's one of the things that I think it's really important to highlight, and at the very beginning, the fact that, the way we talk about, especially the question of theology, in the sense of knowledge and everything we know about God, it's not just a mere idea. Like the scripture will put it, the gospel according to Luke, that the word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. So it's not something that, we need to do too much of intellectual rigorism to fathom. So Easter is that which makes it concrete, that indeed God took upon himself the nature of man and dwelt with us. Oh, that is in many ways a huge, number one, consolation, and I would say hope, as I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit further.
True. So in other words, the essence, you would say that the essence and imperative of Easter is unyielding, in the sense that it declares, for instance, that suffering is not final.
Exactly.
It says that death is not sovereign. Explain that to me, Father. Within the context of what I just explained, and put that or juxtapose that against humanity's deepest longing for meaning.
Yes.
And how that is answered
Oh, beautiful.
By the reason of the risen Christ.
Beautiful.
Or rather, by reason of the risen Christ.
Risen Christ. Yeah, I like that. All right. So, I mean, I again like your choice of words. Man's search for meaning. I mean, that I think is one of our most existential problems. The fact that the meaning of things is usually being lost. But in the context of Easter, let's look at Jesus himself. So, the interesting thing about him is everything that was said about him. I'm talking of in the first 5 books. I'm talking of all the prophets in the Old Testament. Everything, exactly how it was said, came to be. And there are proofs for this. Now, one of the things said, or you can call it juxtapose. One of the things that was said that was already prefigured in people like Moses and the rest was the fact of the redemption of Israel. Now, that's the historical aspect of things. Jesus himself would come, and of course, if you begin to trace the genealogy, you'll be able to situate Jesus, of course, as a Jew, linking to what the prophets have said, coming through the lineage of David, and was himself called the son of David. Why am I towing this line? It is because everything that was promised by God in what we call the economy of salvation, that's God's plan to save mankind, was brought forth in Jesus. Now, when he came, everything he was doing, I was joking around, which could be a risk, although that I'm even surprised Jesus lived up to 33. Because the kind of things he was saying and he was doing in a typical Jewish context, he should have been killed way before. I mean, look at the Jews as we have it today. Look at how strict they are with certain things, their laws, their rules, their rituals. And imagine how it was during Jesus' time. So he came in fulfillment, just the way he came and everything he did. And what did he do? Basically to admit, he himself said it, I've not come to abolish those laws. Instead, what have I come to do? To fulfill them, which is what? To give them meaning. Which means none of the things said prior to my coming would actually make sense in its fullness, except you understand it in me. Now, what did he do? Of course, we know the whole ordeal, and this is what we are doing starting. We call it the Triduum, the Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, Easter Sunday, which is what we are celebrating, isn't it? And then we talk about Jesus going to Calvary on the cross. I hope you know that historically speaking, anyone who had seen Jesus on the cross, at the time it was during the Roman Empire, don't forget, that's just a Roman way of executing Christians. Sorry, of executing people that are not Romans. I should not say Christians. A Roman way of executing people that are not Roman citizens. Jesus was Jew, of course. So, and that's why even other disciples died on the cross, just in different ways. So the point is, that which was supposed to be Roman execution, a source of shame, became what? A source of fame, victory, and meaning. A way of making more sense with what you said earlier, that
man's search for
deeper meaning. Look beyond what you see. That, I think, is one way I would like to put this. So you might be seeing that naked man on the cross, but what it's really saying is, I've killed death, I've killed shame, I've killed every wrong thing that mankind was subjected to. And that's why he himself said, for whosoever believes in me, because in John 3:16 now, shall not perish, but have eternal life. So Easter is that reality. It's not an idea, it's not a myth, it's not anything. It's that reality that puts Jesus, one, as the fulfillment of everything that was before him, that's Old Testament, and the meaning of everything that is from him. So he is just right there in the middle, giving sense to everything that was ever prophesied, but also giving meaning. And this is where we come in. We who live after, we call it an Anno Domini, that's post the resurrection, to now look and say, okay, what meaning did Jesus give to any of these things? I mean, as I'm sure we will discuss, there are many things Nigerians, for instance, are going through that can speak to that which Jesus went through on the cross. And by the way, when I say the cross, I'm referring to virtually, everything that's happened even before he got to the cross. So the scourging on the pillar, the crowning with thorns, the agony in the garden, all of those things. I'm sure there are a lot of agonies in the garden that Nigerians are going through. Scourging on the pillar and the rest.
We'll try to establish, maybe not establish, but we'll try to draw the lines there and see how we go. But, I like how you've opened up, this whole conversation. I'd like for us to stay just a bit more on theology, before we go to real life scenarios and
Okay.
start our linkages. You know, as a Christian, you know, I am, you know, earlier on I talked about how Easter also registers that death is not sovereign. You know, I am also familiar with 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 54. And that is where the Bible, you know, that is the promise that death is swallowed up in victory. You know, but in this age of fragmentation, how does that message, you know, resonate? How does that message remain urgent and confront modern cultures that dismiss readily, quickly dismiss miracles as impossible or irrelevant? And I mean, in a world, you know, you and I, this world where you and I are, the world's skeptical of divine intervention and the supernatural. How does Easter speak, you know, to this realism, to this skepticism?
Yeah. Okay, I mean, thanks again for that. So the way it speaks to it is, to begin with, the fact that what Jesus did, the fact that God made man, came to this earth, is to assume, to attract, to take up everything that man is going through. So now, look at it this way. Jesus himself lived on earth. And that is what we say about the miracle. And don't forget, as human beings, we are usually moved with and by just anything, and sometimes not. So the skepticism is almost, and let's not forget, I mean, our own culture, our own history from where we came, which is not the topic at this point. But where the skepticism is coming in is where this man, who is God and man at the same time, we'll call it the divine nature and the human nature. You see, that meeting place is where most people have problem in reality. So let me make this more concrete. We are going through a particular suffering, call it any kind of suffering, spiritual, existential, whatever it is. The only reason you would believe in miracle is when you are able to translate the suffering to a sacrifice.
Okay.
So here is what, let me put it more concretely. There is a difference between suffering and sacrifice. The key factor, the X factor in between the two is pain. Whether you're suffering or you're making sacrifice, the common denominator is what? Pain. But what translates or what makes suffering, which is painful, into sacrifice, which still includes pain? The key word is what you have said earlier, meaning, purpose. Now that sounds a little bit aloof. So to make it more concrete, let's use one of the scourges of our time. Say, for instance, somebody going through problems with childbirth. That's a scourge, especially in marriage. Now, what happens? That's suffering in itself. And then the person now says, okay, you know what? I'm going to pray to God. I'm going to ask God to help me in this situation, which is, God, is there anything you are telling me with the fact of what I'm going through right now, with the pain that I'm going through right now? You see, you are still going through the scourge, you're still going through the pain, but taking it up and saying, God, is there anything you are telling me with this, makes it a sacrifice. And it is in that space that God responds. That's exactly what he had always done with anyone, in any kind of situation. So you see, this man's search for meaning is something that we will need to pay serious attention to. The fact that in its origin, and this is one beautiful thing I love about being Christian, the fact that 4 major things accounts for why our creed is substantial. Look at it this way. The origin of things, the meaning of things, the morality of things, and the destiny of things can all be explained in one person. I say that again. The origin of things, the meaning of things, the morality, that's the good or bad of things,
yes,
and then the destiny, the purpose of things can be explained in one person. That changes the game. So you can now imagine why it will continue to be a problem for anyone who tries to draw a meaning or morality or destiny or even the origin of anything outside of the person in whom it is situated, namely Jesus. So if there was anything Jesus did on the cross, it is to bring these 4 things, which is what all of us on this earth journey through. We're always talking about origin. If you look at it deeply, just try to analyze any issue. The real thing we are trying to analyze is either of these four things, or all of these four things, or one or two of these four things. Instead, we're trying to figure out the origin. Why am I the one? That's question why. Where is it coming from? What's the origin? Why am I the one going through it? You're still trying to figure out the meaning. What, is it good or is it bad? Morality. And what is even the meaning of this? Why am I going through? What's the purpose? Destiny. I'm saying that the answer is in God, which is why he himself has said beautifully, come to me, all ye who labor and are overburdened, and I will give you rest. Shoulder my yoke. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. It is only in him we can make sense of any of these things, whichever way we want to look at it. So I think that's what Easter really communicates. The fact that, yes, crucifixion, a source of shame, a source of ridicule. People were laughing at him as they were passing. Oh, you say you're a king, save yourself. That's what they were telling him. And what did he say? Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing. Which means what? They don't know the meaning of what is happening right here. And we are no longer at that level, because we are now very exposed to the right information and a lot of it. So we can no longer use that excuse. So it's really important that we pay attention to the fact that that's what we say in Latin, in cruce salus, which means in the cross is our salvation. In those days, in the cross was just execution. But Jesus gave meaning to it, gave a purpose to it, and it changed the game.
You've blended your answer to my last question with real-life application of Easter.
Okay.
And so we're already on the subject matter. And since we're on it, let's just double down on it. I'd like to, earlier on you referenced the book that you called Bad, Mad, or
I'm sorry, I can't remember the author now. But
I also came across a book quite recently.
Okay.
This one is written by an American. It's Heaven Help Us.
Okay.
It's by John Kasich. John Kasich, by the way, the former governor of Ohio.
Oh, I see.
There in the United States. I find certain similarities in what he described in his book with certain conditions of faith here in Nigeria. It isn't entirely about politics, the book now.
Okay.
Or rather, it's how people can find deeper meaning, in life, and influence positive contributions in their communities through, again, acts of faith. So I'm bringing this up now because, Easter evokes all of this, these feelings of hope and spiritual fortification. Today we see how contemporary culture weaponizes belief systems, creating, negative practices or, like tribalism rather than compassion. So, Father, let me ask you the same question that I pondered when I read the foreword of Heaven Help Us, that's John Kasich's book. Why does faith flutter? Why does it flutter in bridging societal divides? Can faith, indeed elevate this human spirit and realign our moral compass?
In simple terms, yes. But allow me to define that in the sense of faith in itself cannot do that. It is the expression of it, rightly or wrongly, that causes this problem. So faith in itself is a supernatural gift of God. And if it is coming from God, it cannot be bad. It's as simple as that. It's that, quoting the book of Hebrews, chapter 5 and 1 and the following, that the guarantee of things not sin. Talking about faith now, yes. Defining it.
The substance of things hopes for,
and
the ends of things sin.
Why do we call it that way? Now, when you are given a gift, a supernatural gift, it's very important we qualify it. Supernatural gift. It's not just any gift. The way you accept it, the meaning you make of it, and how you try to make sense of it with respect to how you live your life is what matters. I should quickly say something here. You see, faith, as it is a gift of God. We have established that. It is faith that gives the substance to what we practice. Relegare is the Latin word where we get the word religion. Relegare means to bind. So what are we doing? A group of people who have been given this gift called faith have come together to express it in a particular way. Do you know what the problem is right now? We are beginning to have a group of people who have gathered, and I'm not sure they have figured out whether or not they have been given this gift. And even if they have, it is not in consensus. So everybody is believing what they want to believe. What Easter does is to let us know in concrete terms, this gift that was given to us by God, what exactly is it? Religion, and I know people use that phrase loosely. I'm religious, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious, and let's not get into the technicality of that. But the point is this: when you say it is not being, practiced well, it is not really faith. Why? Because if it is true faith, it is right. What we need to figure out is have a different mindset and understanding of this. And what is it that I recommend? I say this loosely. Please don't misquote me. But I don't think Jesus came to institute a religion. He came to institute or to make available a kingdom. And what we know, we as Africans, as Nigerians, can relate better to this because we still have that, we have monarchies in our system. So we can understand what kingdoms mean. Think of anything you know. Try to recall anything you know about kingdoms. Now, usually there's a king, there are the people, they are the chiefs, just anything you can think about kingdom. Now link it to Christianity. What am I driving at? If there's a kingdom, there's a culture in that kingdom. The reason I can say...
because I was going to jump right in there and say, and maybe argue with you, that he came to institute a way of life.
Yes, and that I'm still going to come to that. But I said, the way we have come to now interpret religion is what I'm trying to correct. And I'm saying that the first, not the only, the first understanding should be, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. He taught us to pray, and those were his words. So it is those in this kingdom. You are from a particular village, I'm from a particular village, people around are from a particular village. How is it that, maybe we are from the same state, for instance, but different villages. Then you now come and say, this is the way it is done in our village. You see, there is a way of life, there's a culture in that village, even though we are from the same state. Now, link all of these things to Christianity. A group of people who belong to the same kingdom, having the same king, should have the same culture. It is this culture, this way of living, that binds us together as one. That is what is supposed to be called religion. I think we have misconstrued it. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the first point of call, our point of departure should be the understanding that it is a kingdom, which means what? We have a king.
Yes.
We have a culture. We have a way of life. We have beliefs. We have other things in that kingdom. Now, having this, it makes us one. You see, that oneness, that being bonded together, is what is called religion. So it should not be religion first before the way of life.
Father, I understand that we are almost out of time. In fact, we are out of time, but I would like to take this final response from you before we go. And that's where I want you to draw, the linkages between theology and, some of our experiences here in Nigeria. And I'm saying beyond theology now, when we reflect on Easter as an opportunity and possibility of radical renewal, and I mean as a blueprint for societal rebirth. How might the Easter message challenge and provoke systemic and institutional changes in both governance and civic responsibilities in Nigeria? Very quickly, Father.
In simple terms, it starts with the individual. It is individuals that make a society. It is individuals that make a system, that make a government. If there isn't that, like you call it, radical transformation in the person, wherever the person finds
as
him
a blueprint for change.
As a blueprint for change.
Yes.
Check out anybody that has made any significant change in the world. It started with the fact of the creed, the belief system of that person that eventually radiated. So it starts with us, and with what Easter speaks to, it is what God has come to do for you as a person, and then everybody who believes the same thing. So when we say God is love, it's not enough to say God is loving. God is love. So what Easter brings is more concrete. It is real. And it has to begin with the person. Once that transformation is done in you, anywhere you find yourself, you will radiate it. Happiness is like happiness, like anything good. It's like a perfume. You can't spray it on yourself you can't spray it on others without getting some on yourself. It's like a candle light. You can't light others. By lighting others, it doesn't quench yours. God has come to bring something real. Everybody has to take it upon him or herself. And wherever you find yourself, do what Jesus said. Go therefore, proclaim the good news, and the world will change.
Reverend Father Joseph Obada, chaplain, Regina Patches, Girls College, Garki, Abuja. I cannot thank you enough for your... It's almost... it goes beyond it goes beyond the typical Easter sermon. This has been quite a defying educating and informative, I must confess. I would like to thank you so much for coming on our program. In fact, Father, would you promise to be a regular on Insight anytime? Because I would think that beyond theology, you can also run commentaries on some societal and current affairs issues. So maybe it's time to begin to get your thoughts and take on some of these issues.
That'll be a privilege. That'll be
wonderful,
an honor.
wonderful. We'll hold you to that. Thank you so much for coming on Insight, and best of the season to you once again.